Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Heart to Heart Podcast. I'm Brea,
And I'm Kim.
and today we're starting a very special series. This is part of, when we talked about wanting to have more provocative conversations, this is going to be one of those. And it's a series, so we're going to be bringing you a lot of deep thought.
Yeah, the series is called Black Women Stepping into Their Womanhood. And so, really unpacking what that means, what barriers exist to Black women achieving womanhood, girlhood, etc. And as Bria said, this is going to be provocative, and we're going to be throwing, I think, a lot of new ideas and concepts out there. But these are things that we have researched, looked into, and we'll be using different anecdotes to explain.
Yes. So before we jump into this episode, and also this series, we're going to have a big series disclaimer. So first off, the language in this series is going to be rather heteronormative, not in a way to exclude anyone, but just to acknowledge the long-standing trends between, the gender binary in men and women. Secondly, the topics of sexual liberation can be applied to other races, but we are two Black women. Therefore, we are talking about the Black female experience. And lastly, a massive trigger warning. We're going to be talking about pedophilia, sexual assault, and themes in this realm, just because they are so entrenched in our society, our beauty standards, and we're going to get into all of that.
Before we get started, know that you can always listen to us on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and be sure to leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. And thank you to everyone who has done so thus far.
If you want to see us on YouTube and see our faces, we have a channel, Heart to Heart Podcast. You can hear this and watch this exact same episode that you might be hearing on a platform. If you want to see our faces, see the way we talk, all of that stuff, that's up for you to see as well. Okay.
All right, let's get started.
This is gonna be a big one.
Yeah, so sit back, please. Just buckle in.
Get some water, get some snacks, something.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, our overarching question for this first episode of this series is: does sexual liberation exist for Black women?
In short answer, no.
No. So, there's so many ways in which we can start this, but I think pointing to the most recent event, I think that really blew up and threw a lot of these, this whole entire issue into question, is what happened to Chloe Bailey from Chloe and Halle.
Yes. So Chloe, if you guys haven't seen, Chloe Bailey is part of a duo, Chloe and Halle, whom I adore. I love both of them so much. I love their music. But basically, they are a duo, and for the longest time, they had a joint Instagram account. But recently, they decided to keep that account, but also make their own individual accounts because they both are multifaceted individual women and they have so much going on in both their lives. Chloe produces music, she's posting clips of that. Halle is going to be starring in The Little Mermaid. She's going to be Ariel, so I'm sure she's going to have a lot of stuff coming for that as well. But they're grown. They want to post whatever they want to post on their separate accounts. And so they've been doing just that. Specifically, Chloe has been doing just that. She did the Buss It Challenge. She posted a few other things. And because she's a voluptuous girl, people just kind of lost their minds. And she is so gorgeous and so beautiful. But men came out of the woodwork and really over sexualized her posts in a very disgusting, perverted way. And simultaneously, while they were sexualizing her, they were also shaming her for posting the things that she wanted to post. When in reality, she even explained on her Instagram Live after all of this kind of blew up, she was crying and just saying how she does things for herself, as I think all of us do, and she's not seeking outside external validation. She was just posting the things that she wanted to post, letting people into her life, her personality, and they were just going to take it how they wanted to take it, but people took it negatively. And it was just really, really sad to see. And it's a prime example of how men don't want women to be sexually liberated. And when women are sexually liberated, men take that and take advantage of it and like use it for their own twisted sexual desires and objectify the women.
Exactly. And I think in many ways, in like the pursuit of trying to achieve sexual liberation, women are still prey to men being predators and, attacking them, over sexualizing them, diminishing their confidence, but also in some ways benefiting from the images they're posting because of their own sexual desires. And, something that was really interesting in Chloe's case was, she's young. I think, what is she, like 22, 23?
Yeah, she's turning 23 soon.
Pretty young. Who also is pretty young? Kylie Jenner.
Mm.
And I feel like since forever, Kylie has also been outwardly sexual. She dated Tyga, who is older than her. The whole lip fillers, risque pictures, whatever. Those aren't inherently, bad things, but people are not up in arms. The public was not up in arms the way that they were when Chloe posted those pictures. She wasn't accused of, seeking attention, or, trying to get attention, and trying to do all these things. And so it's also just interesting to look at that comparison and
Yeah,
look at, for, Black women, all of a sudden when they want to start to do these things and, really uncover, new facets of who they are and what it means to step into their sexuality, they're hit with so much backlash.
yeah,
And even with Zendaya's new movie, a lot of people are like, I can't see her as playing this role. I only see her as playing these more, teen, kid roles.
mhm.
And so how is that diminishing like her claim to sexual liberation, and romance, and all of these things?
Yeah. There's just like a really scary aspect of control when it
Mhm.
comes to sexual liberation and women just expressing themselves. And I think that men don't want it to be on women's own terms. They want women to be
Yeah.
sexual, but they want it for their own purposes. And obviously there's a generalization and that can be applied to all quote unquote all men or quote unquote all women. Like it's not specifically racialized, but I do want to get into the aspects that are racialized. So while there is like a general thing of ownership between men and women, and men and the patriarchy, wanting to prey on women's sexuality, we're going to also kind of get into it. Like you just started getting into it with Kylie versus Chloe.
Mhm.
Uh, Kylie was more so, I feel like, allowed to
Yeah.
be outwardly sexual.
Mhm.
Uh, and like the outrage of her doing that, it was just a different vibe, a different energy. I didn't really see people trying to suppress it. Like, if anything, it was more so people making fun of her for getting lip fillers. It wasn't saying, stop posting what you want to post or dressing like this or dressing like that. It was just like, oh, haha, like she's dating Tyga, da da da. But it kind of was allowed, especially in her immediate family. No one said, don't
It
date
built her
Tyga.
empire.
It built her empire. All
The
of that
lip
stuff
fillers, her makeup
benefited her.
line,
Yeah,
the clothes she wears, it built her empire. And she is, what is she, like a billionaire right now? Like,
yeah,
she's
allegedly.
extremely wealthy. It contributed to her empire, whereas in the case of Chloe and other, Black women, it has, I don't want to say led to their downfall. I mean, Chloe, and Hallie still have a great, successful career, but you know what I mean? It's not benefiting them in the way that it is Chloe.
Yeah.
I
Chloe
mean, Kylie.
Chloe's being demonized.
Hmm.
And it's sad, and we even touched on this in our, last episode, but this idea that it's also coming from other Black women who are seeking validation by putting Chloe down,
Yeah.
being like, see, well, you deserve the body shaming or the backlash because you should keep that wrapped up. You should be modest. Um, and it's just sad. Like Black women aren't allowed to just have ownership of their bodies. Everyone else wants to have a stake in that, and
Mhm.
everyone else wants to own that and claim that for themselves and tell them how to operate, and it's really sad.
Yeah. And I think, something really powerful that I saw like summarized so beautifully on Twitter was somebody saying like our perception about Black women is limited.
Mm,
And these cases are evidence of that. people not being okay with these risque like pictures and whatnot, and seeing that as being forms of trying to grab attention.
Mhm.
Why can't Black women push those boundaries? Why can't, if Black women want to do that, why can't they? And also, too, I mean, have these Black male rappers not been sexually explicit to the fullest extent possible? I mean, growing up, that is all you saw in music videos and songs, that it was just so clear. So then why, when Black women do it, are people upset? Why are people up in arms?
Because it's about control, like we
It is
just
about control.
and like, so what I want to make clear is like we do see Black women being sexual, but it becomes like weaponized and demonized by men. And Black women right now are not allowed to be sexually liberated because the male gaze over sexualizes them and objectifies them. So while we're able to see songs like WAP blow up, men simultaneously benefit from seeing the images of Black women being sexually liberated and proclaiming their freedom, but at the same time, they still objectify them. And it's like, it's a weird thing where it's like they want to see these sexual images, but then they also want to tell women to wrap it up and keep it covered. It's a weird balance. That's about control.
Also, too, I think with WAP, I mean, people were, there were truly like US politicians tweeting about it. So disgruntled, so upset, saying, this is, I don't want my daughter to ever see this. Like, this is so awful. This is so terrible. And it reinforces these notions that women shouldn't be sexually liberated. They shouldn't be proud of their sexuality. They shouldn't be proud to be free and open and, say these things and express their sexuality in the ways that they want to. And I think they're scared. Like, they know that if Black women are sexually liberated, that is playing with the power dynamics that exist.
Mm-hmm.
And
It's
the
patriarchy.
and the various forms of sexual oppression that women face when you start to really fight for sexual liberation, talk about what that means, it starts to change the power dynamics. Not completely, because there's some, structures and barriers that are obviously hard to overcome, that we still have to work through regardless. But, I think people get scared because women being in these positions to control their own sexuality and their own being, that just goes against the status quo and that goes against the norms. And again, I think people, or Black women who have also played into this and said, well, she should be covering up whatever, well, that goes back to respectability politics.
Yeah.
And that really hits that, in terms of
Being the perfect woman who deserves respect, saying that not every woman inherently deserves it. It's only the women who dress modestly
yeah.
and, yeah, like all that
and,
stuff.
and that feeds into rape culture, because then you're also saying that
Things
to
can be
really be a
justified.
victim, you had to have, turtleneck, full coverage, like whatever, saying that like you have a part in whatever has happened to you, that, it just, that whole respectability politics stuff is still so rampant, and it's so dangerous because it destroys our notion of what Black women could be. It limits our perceptions of what women could be, what Black women could be. And it's dangerous because that also justifies what men have done, which
Yeah.
I think is sick. And again, everything we're talking about and how do you achieve sexual liberation, patriarchy has to be destroyed.
It does.
No way it could stand at the same time that the sexual liberation for women, for Black women, exists.
No, because at the end of the day, right now in our current society, any sexual liberation that Black women and women at large try to express still falls upon the male gaze,
Yep.
even if that's not the intended audience or purpose. So even when we try to reclaim our power and post for ourselves or just do whatever we want, these creepy, patriarchal, over sexualizing men still benefit from seeing it. And that's not saying that we shouldn't do what we want to do. It's saying that men need to do better
Yes.
and self critique and stop being literally perverts.
Everything should not be sexualized. people posting bikini pictures, people doing all this stuff, those things, like, it's sad that stuff like that is seen as like inherently sexual and inherently risque and seen as like suggestive automatically. That's
Yeah.
frightening.
Because even going back to Chloe from Chloe and Halle, things that she were posting was literally just simple pictures of her in a nice outfit posting, but also because she has a bigger butt, people automatically are like, "Oh, she's showing off her butt." No, but I'm saying it's just double standards because if she had been thinner or, was flatter, then people would just it would have been like artful or would have been nice.
Yeah.
People wouldn't have assigned the value that they did to it. And one of the big things that I think set off this whole discourse was the fact that she posted a picture of her literally like saging her room, just a little video of her staging her room in a big t-shirt and in underwear, and you could like see her butt, and people were focusing on that and being like, oh, she's just posting this as a thirst trap. But she was just like, it was art. If anyone else had been doing it, it would have been art. And it's also showing how Black women are so overly sexualized,
Hmm.
because I could just see if it had been a skinnier white model who, and like Vogue magazine had reposted that, it would have been seen as like, oh, this is so artful and powerful and creative and energy and vibey. But because it's a Black woman who has a curvier figure, it was really sexualized.
Yeah. And I mean, the reason why all this over sexualization happens is because, these are tropes and things that have existed since slavery.
Mm,
During slavery, Black women were also extremely sexualized. And even if you look back and you see imagery, Black females who were enslaved, had were drawn with like overly big butts and seen as um
like
like
exotic objects.
right, and also to like people who are constantly seeking like sexual desire and being deviant and all of these different things. So
Yeah.
those perceptions have still existed, and I still think go to explain why automatically when we see Black women, that's what our minds go to. And that is a flaw that non-Black people and Black people have perpetuated. And we have to call that out at some point.
We
We
do.
really do,
We do.
because it's problematic and it's really scary.
And
There's over sexualization too, and these things being inherently suggestive is also frightening when you also hear about all the stories of Black women, getting kidnapped or almost getting kidnapped or having to run away from so many people. I mean, I know for you probably have so many stories as I can share of like men being crazy and literally following you.
yeah.
And like there's just been so many times in my life where I've truly had to like call my dad, call my brothers on the phone, be like, like I'm running home, like you have to come get me because there's people following me.
Yeah.
Because I happen to be wearing a skirt that day or something like that, and
And even when you're not, I
even when
mean,
you're not.
there's just stories of, I had an internship where I was working with like a lot of people from the Philadelphia community. And even at my place of work, I didn't feel safe.
Mm,
I'd come to work dressed in big t-shirts, jeans, sweatshirts, like no makeup, just to try to circumvent the fact that I knew people were going to try to
right.
talk to me. But
Overcompensate.
even then, I still couldn't escape it. And I was literally in fear some days, like thinking, oh my God, what if someone follows me home from my job and like comes to my dorm room and is like doing, like, you know what I mean? Things like that. And like, even people in the workplace, like, do I feel safe around the people that I'm
Yep.
working with? And it's like, there's so much burden on women to try to like lessen the risk of like something of harm being brought upon us. But in reality, we got to start checking the men
Yep.
who are preying on women.
Yep. And I mean, in our last episode, again, we talked about accountability, and that is going to take other men really calling out their bros or their guys or whoever it is
Yeah.
for perpetuating these things, for calling and hollering at women, for doing all these things, for over sexualizing women and assuming that, women want to get with them or just because of what they're wearing or whatever it may be. And
And that's
again, like
all
these,
justification.
yeah, and these things fall really hard, especially during Black girlhood, because Black girls tend to develop at a quicker age. So we're exposed to that, just statistically a lot sooner than girls of other races, and that's sad because then think about the implications of that just for your own mental sanity and like your own emotional state. It puts you in fear from such an early age, and that's sad. That's really really
Yeah.
sad.
It's just that basically, I feel like every aspect of our lives is ruled by like the male gaze.
Mm,
And there's so much burden placed on us to be perfect or, modest. And there's no like standard for men to do better.
yeah,
And that's what's just frustrating, like we are never able to come into our own fully. We're never able to take full charge of our being and how we want to express ourselves because we're always worried about what someone else is going to think and what someone else is going to say. And because someone else is always going to have a comment and think what you are doing shouldn't be done or could be done better or XYZ. And it's so frustrating and mentally draining,
yeah,
and it's something that I think we need to really move past.
yes,
I want to move past seeing Black women as objects and sexual beings in a perverted form. You know what I mean? Like it's simultaneously like expected of us to be super sexual and freaky and all this stuff, but at the same time we're supposed to be hidden and clothed and closeted. And that just goes, I know I keep saying it goes back to control and like men wanting control of our bodies. And I just want more for us.
I want more for us as well. And I think, just in the same ways that it's very evident that for Black people to achieve like liberation, it also takes white people doing the work. That is exactly what we're saying here. Our sexual liberation, we can't, there's only so much we can do after a certain extent. Like, it really is going to come down to challenging the patriarchy, to challenging men, and questioning the entire framework that allows for this to continue and allows for this to happen.
If it's only us women screaming at the top of our lungs, we just get dismissed.
Hmm.
Men have to check their friends and even people they're not friends with. Check men, please.
I think starting to wrap this up, it once again, n- the patriarchy and the things that we have accepted as a society need to change.
Mm-hmm.
There's only so much women can do after a certain point, and some women have already become indoctrinated with the harm that men have perpetuated.
The
So
pick me.
again, it's going to take multiple actors to really get us to this point of liberation, of sexual liberation.
Yeah. Also, this is something I want to say. It's so like widespread and like such it's the default to like objectify women and objectify Black women specifically. So when we see then celebrities like Lori Harvey, getting spoiled, quote unquote, or actually just getting treated the way she deserves, it's like a rarity. And then people have so many think pieces on it and be like, does she deserve this? Like, why is this happening to her? It just shows how rare it is for Black women to actually be treated with respect and get wined and dined and not be objectified. You know, it's like that's why there's so many think pieces because it's so rare to see.
Yeah,
It's so rare to see when in reality that should be the standard.
yeah.
That should be the standard.
And again, the bar is low. The bar is low.
The bar is low. I just hope that we get to a point one day where women are able to express themselves without men being predatory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
That
whole
is, you summed it up
that's
because
the whole
that
tweet.
that is really what it is.
That's the whole tweet.
And that will lead to so much, to just a safer way of living and existing. Um, and I really don't think people understand like how deep rooted the fear is in women of what men will do when you're just out alone and in the streets. And like that is something I feel like we don't talk about that as a society enough, like just what that means
Yeah.
and kind of like how that affects you emotionally, like going outside and automatically like, having to, I don't know, I just like,
Be
you're
on
almost like in
alert.
a different state. And like, I guess, everywhere you go, you should be alert regardless, but just knowing that you're more prone to people preying on you, you
Mhm.
shouldn't have to live like that.
No,
And
you
it
should
shouldn't
not.
this should not still be happening, this should not still be going on. And I really hope that we can really begin to unpack these things and fix these things,
I
uh,
agree.
and that men realize the part and their place that they can play in unbreaking in like deconstructing this cycle.
Okay, sorry. Another last point. This just goes to show also it's about control, and men kind of like not having consent. Um, the silhouette challenge is something that's been going around. It's a challenge on TikTok where mostly girls and women have been posting, and it's basically like you're bummy, and then it transitions to like you in red light, and you're just posing, showing off your silhouette. Men have been going in, taking women's videos, editing off the red light so they could see women's naked bodies when that's not what women consented for you to see. And there's little like viral tweets of people laughing and being like, oh bro, like you're so down bad, like that's so funny, ha ha, like you're starving if you really want to see a woman's body like that. That's not a joke.
And it's another example of women trying to step into their
That's
sexuality and people twisting it, perverting it, and making it something that women have to be fearful of.
yes. Yes, because then after people figured that out, they were like, make sure you're wearing some, tight fitting
Yeah,
undergarments
yeah.
underneath because people are editing off the red light. Like, why do we have to always take 10 steps to try to counteract the craziness that men do?
Instead of
When
going
men
to
should
the
just be the
source,
ones to hold themselves accountable and not
going
do
to the
these things.
source, going to the
How
source.
come women always have to be 10 steps ahead and try to think of, oh, I shouldn't wear this, I shouldn't do this, I need to make sure I do this for the challenge. Da, da, da. Why? It would all be simple if men just acted right.
That's what this all boils down to. That's gonna be the general trend of our little series. But um I think we really hit a lot today.
Yeah,
And really started to uncover a lot.
yeah.
Again, this idea, does sexual liberation exist for women? No. And at this point, it's how do we get there?
How do we get
How do
there?
we get there, and how do we hold men accountable? How do we destroy the patriarchy, just to put it bluntly, um, in order to get to this place? And I hope that people listening are able to understand the real life implications, the racialized aspects of gendered violence and whatnot, because it's really important. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank
thank
you
you
all for
all.
listening. Thank you. Next week, we're going to be we're just going to keep this trend and dive even deeper. We're going to talk about where does this like desire for control come from? The answer shortly, pedophilia. And we're going to get into how that shapes our beauty standards and our society at large. So thank you all for listening. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye.
Bye.